Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me as always. The 2026 Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl are in the books. We head towards the NFL Combine before Pro Days start, taking us all the way to the 2026 NFL Draft. Here at Saturday to Sunday, this is when we are kicking it in the high gear, updating rankings, scouting reports, working on our tiered rankings, exclusive to Saturday to Sunday. But tonight we are breaking down everything. I have spent the last few days watching every minute of practice that was available on the Senior Bowl, watching the game as much as I can get from the Shrine Bowl as well, to share my thoughts on many of the top prospects that will make up the 2026 NFL Draft. With the NIL money and so many prospects going back to school, the draft has kind of came full circle that a lot of the top 100 prospects, and we're going to see more prospects from these all-star games than we've ever seen over the last 15, 20 years, because more underclassmen are going back to school. The NIL money, the transfer portal, that has changed the landscape of college football. So these all-star games are really going to be where so many prospects get drafted to your favorite NFL teams, eventually your favorite fantasy teams, and we go from there. So let's get right into it. I'm going to start with the Senior Bowl recap, and then at the end of the show, we will recap some of the things that I thought stood out from the Shrine Bowl as well. So I'm just going to go quarterback, mostly kind of go alphabetical order. So let's start at the quarterback position. And again, most of the time I'll go alphabetical, but I think at the quarterback position, there's not too many of them. I want to start with Garrett Nussmeier because he was the headliner name at the Senior Bowl, and I don't think he disappointed. I think he helped his draft stock. I think he looked really good in the actual game, but even in terms of the practice reps, I thought he was clearly the most decisive quarterback in terms of knowing what to do with the football. I thought the accuracy looked good, and I just thought he had a strong week down there in Mobile. I think he's positioned himself to be back in the day two mix. Could a team fall in love with him late round one? I think it's possible. Similar to where the Giants drafted Jackson Dart last year. Maybe a team trades back in who's picking in the top 10. Maybe they pivot to a different position, and then they like Nussmeier enough to maybe trade back into the late round one. I think he's more of a day two prospect, but I do think the Senior Bowl really helped Nussmeier's chances of going in day two, top 50. I think it's at least in the possibility now, because remember, this was a prospect that many evaluators thought he was a top 10 quarterback, had a chance to be QB1 in this class last summer. Obviously a down year by Nussmeier, but the working progressions, the mental processing, quick release, good touch. There's things about Garrett Nussmeier's game that are impressive. I think the physical traits are just average, but I think a setting like the Senior Bowl, he really could stand out, commanding the huddle. So I thought it was a good week for Garrett Nussmeier. If we go for the other quarterbacks, Luke Ottmeyer, Taylor Green out of Arkansas, Ottmeyer out of Illinois, Diego Pavia out of Vanderbilt, Cole Payton out of North Dakota State, and Sawyer Robertson out of Baylor. I think Luke Ottmeyer, I don't think stock up or stock down. I think he showed that, dual threat ability like we knew he had, some inconsistencies in terms of his passing, but I think he's ticketed still for a late day 3 type grade in terms of the 2026 NFL Draft. I think Taylor Green out of Arkansas comes away the most intriguing, and I would actually say I think now he would probably leapfrog me. I had him and Cole Payton kind of side by side. I think what Green showed at the Senior Bowl just stood out a little bit more. We know that they both have that dual threat ability. Payton 6'3", 233 at North Dakota State. Taylor Green also, great measurables. We know Green and Payton could both make an impact with their legs. I think Green showed me a little bit more, even though there's inconsistency there in terms of his passing ability. But I think both Taylor Green and Cole Payton both are intriguing day 3 prospects. I could see both of them with their size, with their frame, with their athleticism going somewhere in that round 4 to 6 range. And I think this week was a slight stock up for Taylor Green, and I would say about neutral for Cole Payton coming off of what we saw from the practices and then the game. And then Diego Pavia out of Vanderbilt, obviously a household name for anybody who was in the college football this year. Listen, we know that the concern about Pavia is going to be there, right? The size is going to be a major limitation. He's going to have to go to an offense that will scheme around that, move the launch point, RPOs, bootlegs, rollouts. That's the only way, but he could be a little bit of a spark plug. Now, again, we talked about on the last show, he came in, measurements came in really short, listed at 6 feet, came in at like 5'9.5". So that's going to be somewhat of a concern. I wouldn't say, I don't think he improved his stock this week. And if the evaluators in the NFL knew he was already that short, then I won't even say he hurt his stock. I think we're still looking at a guy who could be a late round pick or even a UDFA because of those size limitations. And then Sawyer Robertson, a guy I've been intrigued with since the summer. I would say from the Senior Bowl, I think it's going to be Garrett Nussmeier, and then I think Taylor Green, Sawyer Robertson will vie for the next prospect taken from the Senior Bowl. He's got above average athleticism and mobility, but I think he throws right now better than Taylor Green and Cole Payton in terms of ball placement, accuracy. So I think that's the slight lean in that. The other guys have the better athleticism, but I think Robertson's got enough athleticism that we've seen more in terms of the passing acumen that I would put him there. I still think he's a round 4 to round 6 type prospect as well. Let's take this to the running backs. And it was a strong class of running backs down there in Mobile. This, I'm just going to go kind of straight through them. I think Kalen Black out of Indiana, again, played that whole season, went there. He looked good in practices. He was one of the better running backs in terms of what we saw in the practices. He had some nice runs during the game as well. So I think Kalen Black has kind of solidified himself as that round 5-ish type running back. Maybe he can go, around earlier in round 4, but I would say probably around 5, round 6 pick is where we will see Kalen Black come off the board. A couple other running backs that I want to talk about. Adam Randall out of Clemson. Didn't talk about him on the preview show. Transitioning from wide receiver to running back, 6'3". He brings up a lot of Antonio Gibson vibes. So I think a team, we saw Tyrone Tracy do it a couple of years ago, but Tracy didn't have as much of a wide receiver profile as Adam Randall has. So I thought there were moments in terms of the practice that you saw that route running ability that's going to create mismatches coming out of the backfield. So I think for Randall, he's going to be an interesting guy because I don't think a team's going to take him to be a traditional running back, but I think he could be a guy that teams are really intrigued with as their third running back on the roster because you could do a lot of different things with him. You can line him up in the backfield with another traditional running back and then motion him out. You can line him up in the slot sometimes. You can do different things. So I think Randall's versatility might help go a little bit higher over some draft more well-known running back prospects. And I think it's going to be solely because of the fact that he's got that wide receiver background. So I think it makes him a little bit intriguing in terms of the versatility that he offers. Unfortunately, Nick Singleton suffered an injury at the Senior Bowl. We hate to see anybody get injured. So that's unfortunate for him. Jamari Taylor had some really nice moments in practice. And then he also had a really nice run during the actual game itself on Saturday. Really good contact balance, a guy who's going to fight for yards after contact, physical, tough, but I think he's got good athleticism and short area quickness. I think you saw some of that burst on the big play in the game. I think you saw it at times in the practice is as well. And then I thought arguably the biggest riser from the running back position down there in Mobile was Mike Washington out of Arkansas. Ideal size, really good frame, but he blends that size, frame, power, and physicality with surprisingly good athleticism, good straight line speed, good bursts. So there is a lot to like about Mike Washington as well. He showed functional ability in terms of his pass catching his final season in college. So I think he's got an opportunity to play on all 3 downs. I thought this week really helped him. I could see Washington coming off the board in that round 4, early round 4, round 5, kind of where we saw Bashal Tutin and Cam Scatterbull last year. I would not be surprised to see Mike Washington come off the board early in day 3. If we take this to the wide receivers, there are so many wide receivers to talk about. I'm just going to go alphabetical order here. This is not in terms of biggest risers, biggest performance. I thought Aaron Anderson had some moments this week out of LSU. He was there with his running mate, obviously Garen Nussmeier and Barian Brown. So LSU well represented here in the Senior Bowl. I thought Anderson had some plays in the game. Thought he had some moments in practice showing his separation ability. He's a versatile offensive chess piece. I think we saw that in moments during the practices. And then I think you saw some of that separation ability and yak ability in the game as well. So I thought it was a solid week for Anderson, probably like a round 6, round 7 type prospect. Vinny Anthony II out of Wisconsin, stock up on Vinny Anthony II. I didn't know much about him. My exposure into this kind of made me go back to the film a little bit, and I'm definitely intrigued with him. So I'm going to say stock up. I want to even dig in a little bit more on him before I kind of talk about a hard, fast draft projection. I would say right now somewhere in that mid to late day 3 as well, round 5 to round 7. But I thought it was a good week for Vinny Anthony out of Wisconsin. Stock up on him. Barian Brown, I mentioned his teammate before, Aaron Anderson. Barian Brown was once upon a time a Debbie Darling. This was a guy that was highly regarded coming out of high school, went to Kentucky. He was on everybody's Debbie list. Freshman year, he was catapulting up rankings, and then it's kind of been, very ho-hum the rest of his collegiate career. He's on the little bit of the thinner side in terms of the frame, but I think you're starting to see what made him such an intriguing prospect earlier in his collegiate career. Explosive playmaker, really good with the ball in his hands, really good movement skills, an explosive returner, and it showed really good separation this week in practice. We saw it in the play in the game as well. So Barian Brown, I think stock up on him. He might have been like a round 7 guy. I think maybe he's pushed his way into that round 5, round 6 mix as well. So I would say Barian Brown definitely helped himself this week. Josh Cameron out of Baylor, built like a running back, really physical. He's like 6'1", 225 pounds, bounces off people. He's got that running back build, but he's a tough, physical, rugged wide receiver. He's good with the ball in his hands. He's pinballing off people. I thought it was a good week for Josh Cameron as well. So I think stock up on him. He showed that physicality and that yak ability after the catch. He showed that physicality during his routes and at the catch point as well. I thought the slot wide receiver out of Missouri, Kevin Coleman, really had a good week as well. 5'11", 180. He's electric in space, really good acceleration, stop-start ability, with uncovering sometimes at will. So I thought it was a really strong week for Kevin Coleman. Other wide receivers, I thought Malachi Fields, you can make the case, was the best wide receiver here. He had that one amazing highlight play from Daniel Jeremiah to Todd McShay. It sure sounds like Malachi Fields is in the running to be a top 50 pick. I thought he was more of like a round 3 guy, and I still think I'll probably have a round 3 grade on him for me personally, because I do have some concerns about his separation ability, but he showed better separation ability here than I thought he was going to have. He showed great ball skills, great body control, that there's a lot of people who think he's going top 50, maybe even earlier. So Malachi Fields really kind of exploded onto the scene this week at Mobile, definitely helping his draft stock in the process. Ted Hurst at a Georgia State. Love when these small school guys, I'm going to get to another one as well. Love when these small school guys take advantage of the Senior Bowl. Ted Hurst came into this week probably as like a 7th round grade for many people. I hadn't even really dug into any of his tape, but he looked like he belonged. He looked like he was one of the top 4 or 5 best wide receivers in Mobile. I think he's now put himself in the mix somewhere in that round 4 to round 5 range because of 6'3", good size, explosive, good athleticism, ball skills. There's a lot to like about Ted Hurst's game. He did not look like he didn't belong here. He stepped right in and was performing from the beginning of the week. Speaking of small wide receivers, how about D3 Tyron Montgomery out of John Carroll? Never once this week did it look like he didn't belong with these guys. So coming from D3, played in one of the other All-Star games, gets invited to the Senior Bowl, and he was uncovering everybody. He was showing separation. He was showing athleticism. He was showing route running chops. This is a guy who was probably going into the week a UDFA on most people's boards. I think he's now put himself in the mix, similar to Ted Hurst, is that if these guys come off the board in that round 4, round 5 mix, I would not be surprised. Once you get past that top 100, teams are looking for guys that maybe still have a lot of development and growth and upside. Well, a guy from Georgia State, a guy from John Carroll Division III, these are guys that teams are going to bet on their traits and that they have a lot of development and upside still to do. And that's where you start to see some of these guys come off the board. So I think they've now put themselves in the mix to maybe be round 4 or round 5 prospects. And before this week started, we were probably talking UDFA for Tyron Montgomery, late rounder for Ted Hurst. And now that has changed real fast to both of these guys could be going somewhere in the round 4, round 5 mix. Reggie Virgil at Texas Tech, another winner in terms of the receivers. He was showing really good quickness, instincts for a bigger receiver, 6'3". He was showing the ability to uncover. He was showing his athleticism, ball skills, his route running ability. So that was a really good week for Reggie Virgil out of Texas Tech as well. If we take this to the tight end, just going to go through alphabetical order here and some of the guys that stood out. Nate Bernkerscher out of Texas A&M. He came there mostly looked at as predominantly as a blocking tight end, but he showed pretty solid receiving chops. I think that is really important for a guy like him, a prospect who's looked at as mostly a blocking tight end. All of a sudden, if he shows the capability to be a serviceable receiver, he could be a tight end too. Maybe not a tight end 3 that just comes in and blocks. He can come on the field as a second tight end. I think he's now put himself in the mix to be taken in that round 5, round 6 range. But yes, he's going to be drafted more for his blocking ability, but he's now shown the ability to at least be versatile enough to get out in the flats, be a serviceable pass catcher as well. Justin Jolly out of NC State. I know there were some moments in the practices that he really stood out. We know he's a little bit undersized at only 6'3". Solid frame though. He's always been a guy that uses his athleticism, uses his quickness to create separation, good after the catch. He's going to create mismatches if he gets lined up with slower linebackers. So I think Jolly kind of held firm as a round 4, round 5 type prospect here at the Senior Bowl. Tanner Koziel out of Houston. He had a couple highlight reel plays in practices. He's a really interesting guy with his size, his frame, his pass catching ability, his athleticism. So I think status quo on his draft stock, probably somewhere in that round 5, round 6 range. Tanner Koziel, hear his name called. One of the big winners of the tight end position, Sam Roosh out of Stanford. Very much traditional inline tight end at 6'5", 260 pounds. But he, for a guy that size and frame with solid blocking ability, he showed the ability this past season to be productive, and he kind of used that momentum to really look impressive here. I think he's probably, I don't think he's going top 100. If he sneaks in late round 3, I wouldn't be surprised. But I think early to mid round 4, a team's going to look at him. A guy who can play on all downs, a guy who can line up in line, could do a lot with him. I think Sam Roosh stock up following the Senior Bowl for sure. If we take this to the offensive linemen, a couple of offensive linemen that I really want to call out. Demetrius Crow-Over out of Texas A&M. I think he's got a chance to be one of the first offensive linemen taken from the Senior Bowl, probably somewhere on day 2. He showed really did well in the one-on-one reps against a really strong defensive group. So I thought it was a strong week for Demetrius Crow-Over out of Texas A&M. I think in the running with him to be the most impressive offensive lineman and the one who will get taken the earliest also, if it's not Crow-Over, is Jennings Dunker out of Iowa. He really looks the part. He held his own this week. Really impressive week for him. I think he could hear himself. His name's called as early round 2, but I do not think he gets off the board, he's not sitting on the board when day 3 starts. So he will be taken somewhere, I think, in round 2, worst case, round 3. Sam Heck out of Kansas State. Really strong week for Sam Heck out of Kansas State. Versatile. I think you can play him in center, in any of the interior positions. I think you can have him play. He's probably a guy who's going to come off the board round 4, round 5. But I thought it was a strong week for him in the practices. Max Einacher out of Arizona State. He's right in the mix. He probably is going top 50. And if he goes top 50, he probably will push his way to be the first offensive lineman taken. But he had a really strong week of practices. The film is good for him. Now we checked off the Senior Bowl. So I think stock up on him as well. So I think there's 3 guys that could all go round 2 from the offensive line here at the Senior Bowl. And I think they all had really good. I think Kalen Rutledge at Georgia Tech, another guy who I thought had a strong week down there in Mobile as well. Let's flip this over to the defensive side. One of the guys who I was really focusing in on this week was Caleb Banks out of Florida, a top 50 talent who only played a few games this year due to injury. Had a little bit of a rough start first day, but then practices on day 2 and day 3, Banks showed why he's a top 50 talent, why he could easily go round 1. He's going to be generating a lot of buzz. His speed to power. We saw his ability here in the Senior Bowl. I think with a strong rest of the pre-draft process, Banks could hear his name called late round 1, if not top 50. I think is well on the way for him. Zane Durant out of Penn State. He was a guy who I thought looked really good in practices this week. He's an upfield, quick first step, explosive penetrator. I think it'll be round 3, early round 4, where we will hear Durant's name come off the board. Lee Hunter out of Texas Tech, he was unstoppable the entire week. Every time I watched him, I think now some people thought he might fall to early round 2. I think he's going round 1. What we saw down here in Mobile, how many teams are looking for defensive tackles that can get after the quarterback? I think Hunter can do that. I think he checked off every box he needed to down there in Mobile. Really impressive performances every single practice from Lee Hunter. K'Ron Crawford out of Auburn. He doesn't get as much of attention as his teammate there from Auburn, but I think he's a round 3, round 4 prospect. You saw moments this week in practice where he showed that first step explosiveness and the bend off the edge. You saw it in the game as well. So I think stock up on Kenyon Crawford out of Auburn. Romello Height out of Texas Tech. I think he's going somewhere on day 2. A little bit undersized at only 235 pounds. But again, know who he is. Get him going after the quarterback. He's got that first step. He's got that explosiveness, a little bit of an older prospect, going to turn 25 next season. So maybe that pushes him a little bit. But I just think too many teams are looking for pass rushers and edge rushers. I don't think Romello Height's going to get out of round 2. Derek Moore, one of the other big winners this week down there in Mobile. I think he's going somewhere early to mid round 2. The edge rusher out of Michigan really dominated a lot of his one-on-one reps during practices. It seemed like every time it was his rep, you saw him beating somebody, looking really good. So I thought Moore had a really strong week there as well. TJ Parker, probably going to be the first edge rusher from the Senior Bowl taken. I think top 15 is very much in play. So really good week from TJ Parker. So many good defensive players had really good weeks, but I think Parker is probably the guy who will see him go the earliest of anybody from Mobile in terms of defensive players. And then Zion Young out of Missouri, I think he's going somewhere early to mid round 2 as well. I thought it was a really strong week for him, solidifying his status as that early to mid second round pick as well. At the linebacker, a couple linebackers really stood out. The first one was Bryce Bratcher out of Oregon. He was all over the field during the game, all over the field during practices. I had a round 3, early round 4 grade on him going into Mobile. I don't think he gets out of the top 100. I think somewhere late round 3, team's going to draft him. He's going to go top 100. He's a plug-and-play starter who can be a focal point of your linebacker depth chart, and he's going to be all over the field making plays. Kyle Lewis was unstoppable all week. Whether he's going to be a tweener, a hybrid, I know he's only 6'1", 220 pounds, but all he does is make plays. All he does is cover ability, tackle ability, sideline to sideline speed. It was an unbelievable week for Kyle Lewis, making play after play. I think he is now positioned himself, even if there's any concerns about is he a tweener, his ability to play in coverage, his ability to go sideline to sideline, he's not getting out of day 2. Whether it's late round 2 through round 3, it's always tough to peg where the linebackers come off the board. But I think Lewis is going somewhere on day 2 of the 2026 NFL draft. Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech, he might have had the most impressive day. Day 2 for Jacob Rodriguez was unbelievable. He's a ball magnet. All he does is make plays on the ball. He's always in the right spot. he's going somewhere, I think, on day 2 as well. So Kyle Lewis, Jacob Rodriguez, I think were the best 2 linebackers in Mobile. Bryce Botcher, the third. I think all 3 of them come off the board in the top 100. At the cornerback position, I thought Charles Demings out of Stephen F. Austin, really intriguing traits. He's rising. I think this was a really good setting to show that he belonged. So whether it's late round 3 to somewhere early on day 3, I think his stock helped himself here, showing he could step up in competition. Colton Hood got a chance to be the first defensive player taken from the Senior Bowl. A lot of people think he can go top 12, top 15. I think in Darren Jeremiah's first mock, he had him going like 12th or something like that. So Colton Hood check boxes this past week in Mobile as well. Chris Johnson out of San Diego State. Thought he had some ups and downs. I was hoping for a little bit more consistency out of him, but I still think the traits are just too intriguing that I think he's still going top 50, even if there were some moments this week that I wanted to see him look a little bit cleaner in his coverage ability. If we then take this to the safety position, Bud Clark out of TCU, talked about Jacob Rodriguez before. Bud Clark every single day showing the instincts, showing the ball skills, showing the recognition to be all over the field. I think he's now penciled himself in lock day 2. Could go even as early as mid to late round 2, but if not, he's coming off the board on round 3. He's just got too much playmaking ability. Teams are looking for safeties like that who can do a lot of different things, and that is Bud Clark for sure. So there it is. Senior Bowl recap. Talked about tons of offensive prospects, hit on the offensive linemen, guys that stood out, and the defensive prospects as well. Let's turn this to the Shrine Bowl. Talk about a couple guys that I thought stood out from the Shrine Bowl as well. Obviously, not as much practice tape you can get a hands of, but did watch the entire game. So let's go through some of the positions. I think at the quarterback position, Mark Gronkowski out of Iowa was the best quarterback in terms of the game. I thought him and Cade Klubnik were the best for the week. So I still think Cade Klubnik is going to be the first one taken from the Shrine Bowl. Let's not forget, like, he did have an invite to the Senior Bowl, but he elected to go to the Shrine Bowl. Klubnik was a guy that when the year started, a lot of people had a round 1, top 10, top 15 grade on him. So I still think his dual threat ability, his athleticism, his pedigree, where he was in the pre-draft process before the year started, I think Klubnik will be the first quarterback taken from the Shrine Bowl. But I do think Mark Gronkowski out of Iowa, his dual threat ability at 6'2", 230, I think he had a really impressive week down there. I think he puts himself in the mix. I think guys like Taylor Wallace and prospects like that from the Senior Bowl will go before him. But I think Gronkowski's now put himself in the mix to be a round 6, round 7 type prospect with his strong week here at the Shrine Bowl. In terms of the running backs, I think Damon Claiborne, in terms of the practices, I thought stood out the most. And then also Robert Henry Jr. out of UTSA. I thought those two were the 2 running backs that I thought performed the best down there at the Shrine Bowl. In terms of the wide receivers, Eric Rivers out of Georgia Tech, the explosive, versatile slot return man, 5'11", 175 pounds. I thought he showed good separation ability. We know he can uncover in the short to intermediate. I thought he showed the ability to get vertical as well. We know he's got yak ability. So that it was a strong week from Eric Rivers out of Georgia Tech. J. Michael Sturdivant, I think, was another guy. I think him and Eric Rivers are the 2 receivers that I'm most intrigued with from the Shrine Bowl, in addition to Skylar Bell. But J. Michael Sturdivant checks off boxes: size, frame, athleticism, ability to play outside X wide receiver and get vertical. So I thought it was a solid week for J. Michael Sturdivant as well. Caden Wedgen out of Iowa. We know he's an elite return guy. Showed better receiving abilities down there in the Shrine Bowl than we've seen in actual film. That separation ability. Listen, I kind of think a guy like Gunner for the Giants, mostly a return guy, but when he had an opportunity to play this year, he showed that he was functional as a backup slot wide receiver. So if Wedgen could be an explosive returner and then also be a backup slot, I think that adds value to a team as a round 6, round 7 pick. So I think Kidden Wetchen has now put himself in position to not only be looked at as a return guy, but maybe he could be a wide receiver 5 on a depth chart as well. And that adds value that maybe a team will even be willing to take him a little bit higher. I think the tight ends were probably the strongest offensive position from the Shrine Bowl. Dallin Bentley, Jack Andres, Luke McCray, Elon Raridan, all 4 of those guys, I think, have a chance to go somewhere round 4, round 5. And if one of them snuck in to late round 3, I wouldn't be surprised. So I think all of those guys kind of had solid performances down there at the Shrine Bowl. I think you'll see all of them at the Combine. I think you'll see those guys, most of them get early day 3 grades. We'll see if anybody can maybe step up and test out better. Maybe that'll be the thing that moves them up a little bit into that late round 3 mix, and maybe they can get into the top 100 prospects in the NFL draft. Caden Barnett out of Wyoming, I thought he showed that he belonged. He stepped up in competition. So I think he was a big winner from the offensive line group there. Caden Barnett out of Wyoming. Jager Burden out of Kentucky. I thought he looked really good this week. I think he helps his cause. So I think he's put himself in that like round 5, round 6 mix. I think stock up on him. Brian Parker out of Duke, another guy who I thought really had a strong week as well. I think he maybe even pushed his way into early day 3. So round 4, round 5, I think he's in play for Brian Parker out of Duke. Amani Wagner out of Notre Dame. I think he's going to be the earliest offensive lineman taken from the Shrine Bowl. I don't think it's out of the realm possibility he sneaks into the top 100. He's got versatile to play offensive tackle at left tackle or right tackle, so he could be a swing tackle. I thought he looked really good the entire week at the Shrine Bowl. Defensive lineman, Darnell Jackson out of Florida State. I thought was the best one there, and he got the call up to the Senior Bowl. Nose tackle, possible day 2 pick, great power and play strength. You saw that down there at the Shrine Bowl, and then the call up to the Senior Bowl as well. In terms of edge rushers, I thought Wesley Williams out of Duke and Mason Rager out of Wisconsin were the clear 2 best down there at the Shrine Bowl. We saw Mason Rager out of Wisconsin come away with the defensive MVP, 3 sacks, nonstop motor, and then Wesley Williams, versatile, athletic, quick first step, can drop back in coverage, situational pass rusher, a lot of juice as an early day 3 pick. I really liked Wesley Williams. And then at the linebacker position, Harold Perkins, I was hoping stood out a little bit more, that he was the guy that obviously was generating the most buzz. I don't know if we're going to see him go in the top 50. Do I still think he can go in the top 100? Yeah, but I just don't know if top 50, I think it's too good of a class, too many defensive prospects that we saw shine at the Senior Bowl, and then you mix in the underclassmen. I think Perkins now maybe is more of a top 100 guy. And if he fell to the early portion of day 3, I wouldn't be stunned. But I do think he's still one of the more talented players from the Shrine Bowl game, and he'll go somewhere, I think. But I think it's more round 3, round 4 now than maybe top 50. At the cornerback position, I think Avery Smith out of Toledo really helped himself out as a guy that maybe could go from the mid to late round 3 to potentially early day 3, mid to late day 3 to early to midday 3 now. He had a strong week of practices. I thought he did a good job showing his cover ability. And then Sayre Wright at Nebraska, every single day I thought the practices were strong for Wright. And he now put himself, he's versatile to play inside or outside at the cornerback position, and put himself in the mix to maybe be a midday 3 pick. So those are the guys from the Shrine Bowl that stood out. Obviously, much more detail in the Senior Bowl, just a lot more access to it between the NFL Network coverage, the ESPN coverage, all the additional clips and highlights that are posted from that. Just a lot more coverage to really dig through and share my thoughts on these players. If you're enjoying this content, please get over to the website S2S Football, fastest and easiest way to get there. Check out the premium content tab for $9.99. You get all of our premium notebooks. If you've bought it in the past, please consider purchasing it again. If you've never bought it, please, and you've been a long-time listener, please consider checking it out. It greatly helps us. Every dollar we get goes right back into it. I will be adding a lot more prospects into the scouting notebook and updating those scouting reports if need be. The rankings notebook will have many of the Senior Bowl guys who were not there added to that over the next couple of days. And then obviously I will really start digging into even more film before I make my tiered rankings right after the combine. Those tiers are exclusive to Saturday, Sunday. You get the rankings notebook and the scouting notebook immediately. And then the draft projections notebook comes out in April to get you ready for the draft weekend as well. All for $9.99. If you can't do that, please, wherever you listen to the podcast, rate, review, subscribe, follow on YouTube. If you ever want to watch the podcast there, you can as well. So, on behalf of my sound tech engineer, David Nakano, and myself, thank you for joining us, and we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.